Welcome to Lesson 7 and Algebra 1 and Unit 1. We're going to be looking at adding and subtracting polynomials in this section. This is focusing on learning target 1.5, being able to add, subtract, and multiply polynomials, and obviously we're only going to focus on the adding and subtracting part in this section. So we're looking at adding and subtracting polynomials. In the last lesson you learned a little bit of the vocabulary of polynomials, so if you are unsure of any of that, make sure you go back and refresh that before you watch this video. So before we start into the actual adding and subtracting of the polynomials, we need to refresh ourselves on what like terms mean, because that's pretty much the basis of adding and subtracting polynomials. Like terms are anything with the same variables, and the same exponents. So it's not just that they have the same variables, but they also have to have corresponding exponents. Okay, so for example, down here at the bottom, when we look at 5x squared, we notice a few terms in here that have x's with them. We have a 4x there, we have a 2x squared here, and a 4x here. But only the ones that have the same exponents will be the same or like terms with the 5x squared. So when we talk about combining like terms, we first identify them. So 5x squared, the other like term, is the negative 2x squared. And when we combine them, we are just adding those numbers in front of the x squared. So 5 minus 2 would give us 3x squared. If I look for like terms with the negative 3y, I can see that I have a negative 5y. Neither of those have exponents, so those are like terms. And when we combine those together, negative 3 and negative 5, we end up with negative 8y. I see that I have a 4x and a negative 4x. When I combine those together, I get 0 x's. And this is important. If I include that in my expression, 0x, well, 0 times anything is 0, and if it's just equal, if we're just adding 0, that doesn't change the value of our expression, so we do not have to include that in our final expression. And the last term, plus 3, it does not have any like terms, so we bring that down, just plus 3. So our simplified expression would be 3x squared minus 8y plus 3. But remember that any time we combine like terms, they have to have the same variable and the same exponents. So when we look at adding polynomials, to add polynomials we just have to identify and combine any like terms that we have. So in example number 1, I have 7x squared plus 6x minus 10 plus 3x squared minus 4x plus 5. I'm going to add these two polynomials together by identifying my like terms. I have 7x squared and 3x squared. I add them together to get 10x squared. Notice we did not change the variable or the exponent, just the numbers out, the coefficients in front. We also have a plus 6x and a negative 4x. Make sure you include that sign in front of the 4, the negative 4. This is a positive 6 plus a negative 4, which would give us plus 2x. And finally we have negative 10 and a positive 5. Negative 10 plus 5 would give us negative 5. So after we combined our like terms, after we've added these two polynomials, we end up with 10x squared plus 2x minus 5. Be careful in the second example. You do not always have the same, or the variables are lined up, or the like terms are not always lined up. The first one does not always match with the first one. If we look in the second example, I always try to find the highest exponent first, or the one with the highest exponent, because when we write it into standard form, which you learned in the last lesson, we want to put the highest exponent first and work our way down. So I notice I have an x squared here, and the like term with it is 8x squared. So if I add 1x squared plus 8x squared, I have 9x squared. Then I notice in my first polynomial that I have a 2x, and in my second polynomial we have a negative 12x. We combine those, 2 plus negative 12 would give us negative 10x. And finally we have a negative 12 and a plus 4. Negative 12 plus 4 is negative 8. So after adding those polynomials, we have 9x squared minus 10x minus 8. Again, make sure that you start with that highest highest exponent first. Find it and combine those like terms. When we look at subtracting polynomials, we're going to distribute the negative into the second parentheses and then combine like terms. So we're going to rewrite this into an addition problem so that we can just combine like terms. So I'm going to start with my first polynomial, 7x squared plus 6x minus 10. I'm not changing it at all. I'm not doing anything with that. But the second polynomial, I am going to distribute this negative to everything in the second parentheses. So that negative sign is going to change everything in the second parentheses. And then after I've used it, I'm just going to drop the parentheses, drop everything, and combine like terms. So when I distribute that negative, I end up with negative 3x squared. The negative 4x, two negatives will make a positive, so that's positive 4x. And the negative to the 5 would give us negative 5. Now notice I've dropped the parentheses. I'm not doing anything with those anymore. I'm going to simply just combine like terms. 7x squared minus 3x squared will give us 4x squared. 6x plus 4x will give us 10x. And negative 10 minus 5 is negative 15. So it's important to remember, distribute the negative and then just leave the problem alone. Don't try to go back and think addition or subtraction. We just combine like terms. If we look at the second one, again, we're going to write the first expression, 2x minus 12 plus x squared, and then we distribute the negative in the second. So we distribute the negative to everything in that second parentheses, which will give us negative 8x squared minus 4, and then two negatives would make a positive 12x. Drop the parentheses and just combine like terms. I have an x squared here, that's my highest exponent, combined with the negative 8x squared. That would give me negative 7x squared. We have a 2x and a 12x. Add those together, we get 14x. And we have a negative 12 and a negative 4. Put those together, we get negative 16. So make sure that you distribute the negative when subtracting polynomials and then just combine like terms. You have some practice exercises on the back side of your note sheet. Go through those, see if you have any questions, and make sure you bring those to class.